All right. Good afternoon again, everyone. Good afternoon to the nearly 300 folks who are in the room and counting. Good afternoon once again to Mr. Tony Elumelu, who is here with us, I believe, from his offices in Nigeria. I'm Dr. Shanali Banerjee. I head up the Center for Strategic Philanthropy at the University of Cambridge. It is my enormous pleasure to welcome Mr. Tony Elumelu for a live CSP in Conversation event. I think we have been excited about this event and the launch of this fantastic case study on the Tony Elumelu Foundation. I think for well over a year now, we've been working hard on this. So I think we're so excited to be here and to share all of these very novel and wonderful insights with everyone. So I just wanted to give a warm welcome first to Mr. Tony Elumelu. If you wanted to say a few words before we jump into some of the really interesting things that we have found in this case study.
Nationally, first is to congratulate you and Cambridge University for a great job that you have done with the case studies. I've read it, and it captures vividly, very well, accurately, what the Tony Elumelu Foundation has been doing in trying to economically empower young Africans. And you've actually helped in showcasing to the world that in the 21st century, there's a new model for helping to catalyze prosperity everywhere. So thanks, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu. And so I think one thing that I'll just give everyone here a very brief overview of what we do at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy and why it was so important that we were able to do this, very landmark case study of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. So at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy, we are a research center based at the Cambridge Judge Business School. And so I'll actually ask my colleagues, since we are, she already is way ahead of me. So if you look into the chat, everyone in the audience, we actually have a link here to the case study itself. This is now publicly available, just launched hot off the press. You're the first ones to see it. So this is the case study that our team at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy has been working on with the Tony Elumelu Foundation. So as I was mentioning, we're a research center. We study philanthropy, particularly philanthropy that is happening across emerging markets or global growth markets. So we look at philanthropy in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Southeast Asia. And one of the really core functions of what we do is writing up these very comprehensive case studies of landmark philanthropic organizations in these markets. So it's not enough just to talk about philanthropy in the West, in the so-called global North, funding that gets sent to places like Africa. It's important to also highlight, to investigate, to interrogate, analyze philanthropic organizations that exist on the African continent, in the Middle East, in Asia. So that's what we do at the center. And so when we started this endeavor of writing up case studies on African philanthropists and philanthropic organizations, of course, we knew that we needed to get involved with Mr. Elumelu and the Tony Elumelu Foundation and the very profound work that you all have been doing largely over the last 10 years across the continent. So I think from our perspective, this is an incredible story of a foundation, as we'll hear over the next hour, over the next hour and 90 minutes, of a philanthropic organization and a philanthropist, in yourself, that has gone through several evolutions already, just, in a fairly short space of time, the learning experience, evolving the type of philanthropy, the type of programming that's offered. So just so that everyone, I think we've had quite a few people join just in the last few minutes. Welcome again. There is a Q&A function in the webinar. I see some people have already been sending some greetings to us and Mr. Elumelu. Thank you so much. Very lovely to have you all here. So this Q&A function is specifically so that you can pose your own questions to Mr. Elumelu directly, and we will be selecting some questions in the final 30-40 minutes of our conversation to answer live. So I think that will be a great opportunity for not just myself as a researcher to ask Mr. Elumelu questions, but also for you all in the audience to get to ask some questions directly, which is quite a rare opportunity for all of us. So I'll go ahead and get started because I think, you know, we want to maximize our time with you, Mr. Elumelu. We have some great questions here. Some of them are answered in the case study, and, you know, perhaps we can get your insights as people are downloading the link and exploring the case study for themselves. But for those who might not be familiar, you know, we have attendees here now, more than 400 attendees from all over the world. So not just folks from Nigeria, folks from Africa, but really from across the planet. So it's possible that quite a few of them don't really know that much about the Tony Elumelu Foundation or the journey that you all have taken over the last 10, 12 years. So maybe if you could give us just, you know, a few minutes, a brief synopsis, you know, kind of overhead view of the foundation, where your inspiration of focusing specifically on entrepreneurship came from.
The Tony Elumelu Foundation was founded by Awele and I, my wife, in 2010. Basically, we looked at our life journey and thought it was proper that we impart humanity in mankind in a way that was profound and in a way that helped them to enjoy what we were opportune and lucky to have experienced in growing up. And we set it up and decided that we should democratize luck. We have an economic philosophy we funded, is Afro-capitalism, which believes in the power of the private sector helping to catalyze and grow prosperity across Africa. And we believe that entrepreneurship was critical in helping to achieve all of this. And so we decided that entrepreneurship was one of the most critical ways of growing prosperity. So the Tony Elumelu Foundation was funded. We seeded $100 million to help do this. But because we come from a business background, we understand the impact of measurement. We know that what gets measured gets done. And so we decided to create targets. We want to support 10,000 African entrepreneurs over a period of 10 years. We want to be able to grow business revenues on the continent by at least $10 billion. We want to be able to create at least 1 million jobs on the continent in 10 years. So these were the kind of agenda we set for the foundation, and which remains very critical to what we do at the foundation, and which have helped to make us stay the course. And I would say that it is an Africa solution to creating prosperity on the continent, brought to Africans by Africans. The Tony Elumelu Foundation will have young African men and women who work 24 hours day and night to help make sure that we achieve our objectives. These are African. We also, the capital, initially all African too, but now with the growth of demand for the program, we are partnering with the rest of the world. So the Tony Elumelu Foundation is a 21st century catalytic, Africa-funded, Africa-led foundation that helps to create prosperity across Africa, help to alleviate poverty through job creation, and help to drive inclusiveness by getting our men and women in particular involved in the mainstream of economic activities that go on the continent. So in a nutshell, that is the Tony Elumelu Foundation. We are totally sector agnostic. We support men, women of all sectors, and we support everyone from all across the 54 African countries. We're not interested in where you come from. What's important to us is that consistent with the philosophy of Afro-capitalism, if you do well as a private sector business, you help to prosperity on our continent. And that's what drives what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu, for that really wonderful snapshot of your journey, you know, as a philanthropist, yourself and your wife starting out the foundation, and particularly this focus on entrepreneurship. I think this is, before we move on, I did want to ask, maybe one or two follow-up questions about this, because I think specifically the focus on entrepreneurship is very interesting because, particularly from a perspective of international philanthropy, the kind of philanthropic funding that goes to the African continent from abroad, or, even a lot of African philanthropists, your peers and in other African countries, they focus on other very pressing, very important international issues across Africa, be it education, health. There's a lot of, various perspectives on poverty alleviation. And so I think, what's really interesting has been this focus on entrepreneurship, this idea in a long-term plan, not maybe the idea of these reactionary quick fixes to a variety of challenges and concerns. So I wanted to touch back on this concept of, that you've really drilled down on through the foundation of Afrocapitalism. And you mentioned it very briefly, you touched on it. So I'm just going to circle back there and maybe ask you to elaborate on what does Afrocapitalism mean? What does it look like? What would you like to see, in 10 years, in 20 years? I mean, obviously, the generation of billions and billions, as you said, of local, kind of African capital and African revenue. But I feel like the concept is actually a lot bigger than that. It's not just about, money generated by Africans for Africans. What does that sort of Afrocapitalism look like to you?
So first is we started early on our career in business, and we have seen the intersection of business and humanity. We've seen how in trying to drive business, inadvertently or deliberately, you end up also creating a bigger system that benefits everyone. So we decided from one's business, I saw how growing a small bank, how we're able to create prosperity for shareholders, but more importantly, create prosperity for communities that we operated in. Okay. And so we decided that we needed to test this further, and drive it a bit more. And it was a rigorous research and analysis that we did at the time, and realized that indeed that business and social wealth, so to speak, can coexist simultaneously. Not one waiting for the other, not business succeeding, then you try to pull others up. We can do both simultaneously. And that's the whole philosophy of Afrocapitalism. And more importantly, that the private sector in Africa has a key role to play in developing our continent. Aid is good, government is good, intervention is good, but we, the private sector, must also step forward and lead and be involved and show that in the 21st century, there are better ways of helping to drive economic advancement of the continent. That's the whole philosophy of Afrocapitalism, that if we invest long-term in critical sectors of the African economy, that we will collectively, critical sectors like youth, women, infrastructure, policy advocacy, collectively, we can create a better ecosystem that leads to prosperity, not for one, not for a few, but for generality of our people. And we realize further that no better way to do this than to engage our young ones. In Africa, the demography is telling. We have a lot of young Africans who are not economically engaged. And we thought that would not create or go well for humanity, either in Africa or elsewhere in the world. Because, as they say, poverty anyway is a threat to everyone everywhere. So that, to us, is the whole underlying philosophy, which has continued to drive what we do at the Elumelu Foundation. To us, it's not about just giving seed capital to people. To us, it's much more than that. It's about economically engaging the army of young Africans so that collectively, all of us can prosper Africa. All of us can turn Africa to a better place. Jobs are not created by big businesses. In our group, for instance, you have United Bank for Africa, which operates in 20 African countries and across the rest of the world. But there's a limit to how much jobs we can create through this mechanism. we need to have an army of small and medium-scale enterprises. We need to engage our young people. We need to engage our females so that collectively, all of us. So to us, Afro-capitalism is a realization that the private sector has a key role to play in developing Africa, a call on everyone that we must and should work together, government, private sector, development organizations, agencies, to prosper, to create prosperity. A realization also that there's so much poverty on the continent, a realization that our young ones do not have a clear future because of unemployment, and that if we all come together, we can indeed make a difference that is sustainable, all-inclusive, and lasting on the continent. That is your philosophy of capital. That's what drives what we do at the Elumelu Foundation, and that is why we are even saying to the rest of the world that in the 21st century, we have tested and discovered, found a practical way to help develop Africa, and that is through entrepreneurship. That all of us should come together and make that difference.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu, for that. And I just wanted to, and for anyone who has joined us in the last few minutes, we now have 500 folks from all over the world here. Very, very welcome. And thank you for joining us and hearing about Mr. Elumelu's story, his journey as a philanthropist, and also just recently in the last question, hearing a little bit about what exactly Afro-capitalism means. And if you see in the chat, if you're wondering, what is Afro-capitalism? You joined in late. What are we talking about? Even the link to the case study that we here at the University of Cambridge have written on the Tony Elumelu Foundation is available in the chat. We'll be sharing it again shortly, just in case you missed it at the beginning, so that you can, it is publicly available. It's publicly downloadable. So please have a look, have a read through. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much to everyone who has already posted a question in the Q&A. It looks like we're going to have a very, very interesting open Q&A with Mr. Elumelu in just a little while. So just a reminder that if you have a question about the Tony Elumelu Foundation, about Mr. Elumelu's journey as a philanthropist, different choices that have happened, different perspectives that he may have, please post them into the Q&A. I did want to just politely remind everyone that this conversation is specifically about this case study. It's specifically about the philanthropic organization. So if you have any questions about how to apply for the entrepreneurship program, for example, I'm sure my colleagues on the call from the Tony Elumelu Foundation can post some links into the chat that will be great resources for you. So in that vein, skipping right along to the nitty-gritties, let's say, Mr. Elumelu, of the foundation itself and the evolution that we document in the case study of how the foundation has changed, how it's evolved, how it's innovated over the last 10 plus years. Maybe you can tell us a little, you gave us a little bit of an overview a few minutes ago, but maybe you can drill down a little bit further. Because obviously the foundation itself has had quite a journey from perhaps a more, let's say, traditional philanthropic organization to one that, you know, from 2015, 2016 onwards has had this absolutely exclusive laser focus, you know, on the entrepreneurship program, on developing, you know, young and aspiring entrepreneurs across the continent. So I think, you know, a lot of people here who are familiar with working in philanthropy, different philanthropic organizations, you know, they know that these sorts of shifts are very challenging. You know, they don't happen overnight. You know, you have to collect a lot of insights, a lot of data before you make a move like this. So maybe if you tell us a little bit about how, you know, what the challenges that, you know, were addressed early on in the foundation and how you think the entrepreneurship program addresses those.
No, so when we started in 2010, it was just to work hard collectively to economically empower young Africans. But as time went on, we discovered that you can't be everything to everyone in that space, and that we needed to be more specific. We realized the more we identified, associated, we related with young Africans, that there were some very pressing needs. One of which was access to capital, but more importantly, is business education and knowledge. So if you got capital, what do you do with capital? We realized also that mentoring was critical. Creating a digital network that brings these young African entrepreneurs all together was important. So I recall one day we had a brainstorm session. Professor Michael Porter is our founding patron, and he was in the audience, and we had a heated conversation. Should we focus on just helping to provide seed capital, mentoring, and that for the young, or should we just be more involved in creating an entrepreneurship ecosystem that helps everyone to get there? Which was what we were doing initially. We were involved in so many things, Competitiveness Council of Nigeria. We set up the Blair Elumelu Fellowship in some African countries, helping African presidents to improve their private sector, environment, policy environment. But at the end of the debate, we realized that we needed to be more specific in catalyzing the kind of development and prosperity we wanted to see in Africa, while not de-emphasizing the need to create the right ecosystem for entrepreneurship. And so in 2015, we were now more specific. Prior to then, we've done so much. There's what we call the African Market Internship Program. We brought young Africans, not just young Africans. In fact, 2 years ago, I was in Caribbean, and I saw a guy who came up to me and said, I came to Africa on the platform of the Elumelu Foundation. I said, how come? He said he was on the Army program, African Market Internship Program. We wanted to help fast-growing African SMEs to acquire skills, knowledge within a short period of time, get people who also have been trained in other parts of the world to come work with them, so collectively they can help their businesses grow more. So we tried all of that, but we decided in 2015 to be more direct and more focused. And so that's what we set up to touch 10,000 young African entrepreneurs. We wanted measurability. So at the end of the day, we say this is what in specific terms we've been able to achieve. We defined the jobs we wanted created in Africa, because youth joblessness is, in my viewpoint, cruel and the biggest injustice to our young ones. And so we said, let's have 1 million jobs. We said, in terms of revenue, on the continent, let's create at least $10 billion additional revenue. And so that was when we started this, and how it all started. That let us now be more specific. And that's how the journey started, that today we're happy we've trained over 1.5 million young Africans through our digital training platform. We have also economically empowered over 18,000 young Africans, each with a non-refundable seed capital, beyond the 10,000 we set to achieve in 10 years. Okay, and I'll talk more about this because it's through partnerships also. We on our own, every year, the Elumelu Foundation, true to our commitment, we support 1,000 young African men and women. But we have grown in scale. We have partnered with others to now scale what the impact that we create. That year 8, we have been able to impact or support over 18,000 of them. In addition, we created the largest digital network for young Africans to come together and interact with one another. And these are some of the things we are doing to help catalyze the kind of vision we started with to economically empower these young ones and create prosperity on our continent and help create jobs. We have created over 400,000 jobs so far and still counting. So we are happy with the decision to become more focused. And in the area of advocacy, we're not relenting. Each time we go around, I talk to presidents. We engage with leaders that trying to help them understand that what is good for the small and medium scale enterprises is good for the citizen. If your small and medium scale enterprise do well, they help you power your economy and they help you create jobs. And that is what we need in Africa.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that it comes out very strongly in the case study, and you touched on it briefly just now, this idea that, the foundation, the work that you do at the foundation and the team at the foundation does, it goes so far beyond the simple, transaction that often happens in philanthropy, where there is an issue that needs to be addressed. A philanthropist or a collection of philanthropists, philanthropic organizations, obviously have direct investment, financial investment in helping alleviate that issue. But I think one of the fascinating things about the Tony Elumelu Foundation, and one of the reasons we were so keen to write this case study, is that when maybe you can talk a little bit about the pathway of the program itself, because of course you have a certain pocket of entrepreneurs that actually receive, the seed funding. They receive a seed funding at the end. But, there's so much that comes before that, right? There's so much that applicants, resources that applicants can access through the TEF Connect platform. The funding doesn't come first. In a lot of philanthropic organizations and in a lot of philanthropist cases, the funding comes first. For you, the funding comes at the end of what is quite a long and involved journey that an entrepreneur can take. So you've really invested a lot of time and resources and thinking and, bringing in very, very interesting, very brilliant people from all sorts of sectors and thinking about how to maximize the impact early on in the pipeline before you even get to the money. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I'd really like, all of these hundreds of people here that have joined us. I'd love for them to really get the essence of how different things are at the Tony Elumelu Foundation than, the usual organizations.
What we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation is a practical demonstration of being on the ground, boots on the ground, knowing the challenges that people here encounter or face, and finding solution from within on how to alleviate this. We found out that access to capital was important, but there are more equally important challenges. Business education was important because some people even inherit family wealth, but they don't know how to turn that family wealth into success and help to create prosperity for themselves and for others. We found out that so many things were lacking, on the continent. And so we decided that before we even provide seed capital, the starting point, let's democratize luck. I am a beneficiary of luck. I was at the right place at the right time. I'm not who I am today because I was the most intelligent in my class, nor am I who I am today because I came from a solid financial family. No, not at all. But just hard work, but more importantly, being lucky, of course, hardworking. And then, as they say, when hard work and luck meet, then it turns to more success. But so based on all of this, we decided train people, first create awareness, let people know, and that democratization of luck, that this opportunity exists. So we created awareness. We engage CNN with the media. We created massive awareness about the opportunity and encourage young African men and women to apply. In areas where we had language barrier, like in Arabic and North African countries, we had to devise ways of communicating with them that part of the world so they can also come forward. We envisaged challenges at some point. Female participation was a bit low. We decided, no, we will not be fulfilling our promise if we didn't engage females in this program. So we created schemes, awareness again, that sector. And so through this, people started applying. First year we got about 20,000 applications, but right now we have over 500,000 applications in a year. So we're happy we achieved that. Beyond now creating the awareness is how we select people. But we said it is sector agnostic, anything, fashion, education, agriculture, technology, just so long as you think your ideas can help to transform Africa, feel free and come to us. So they all said coming in. And then we have a process working with Accenture initially, and now with Deloitte, to make sure the selection process was transparent and that no one related to the founder or to the staff had opportunity to apply. Let's just make it open to the rest of young Africans. And so we did that, a part of the process. Then, when we select the 1,000 or 2,000, what the number we want to support that year, ours is 1,000. We select 1,000, then next in the training. We train them for 12 weeks through our digital training platform, the TF Connect. And to me, I think that is the biggest thing we have done for entrepreneurship in Africa, creating a strong army of future business leaders, teaching them different business principles, sharing case studies with them, including my own case study, my own, what we call the TOE principles of philosophy, because I have in my own journey too, I've made some right decisions, some bad decisions, and just sharing with people what I've been through so that it can also help to inspire them, in their own journey to entrepreneurship and business leadership. So we do all of this. Then we appoint mentors for these young entrepreneurs. And again, they have gone on through our research, through our findings, to say that the business education and appointment of mentors were two most critical success factors in their career journey. And what two most important things they've benefited from the Tony Elumelu Foundation, beyond even capital. So at the end of all of this, we provide capital, the $5,000 non-refundable seed capital to help them. To me, it's just proof capital, just to help you prove your ideas too. Because if you prove your idea, as we have seen, a lot of successes have come. People have gone on to receive bigger funding, support from across the world because they were able to prove their concept. And that to me is that democratization of luck, that you don't need to die with your business ideas. Your business ideas will give you small seed capital to enable you prove it. And if you prove it, others will come and bring bigger money to help you scale and grow to the next level. We want to create future UBAs, and I want to create future Transcorps. We don't want to be the only ones in that space. So that is what we try to do through the Tony Elumelu Foundation. So yes, it's an ecosystem. It's a journey. The steps are there, and these young Africans, they appreciate what we have done and what we're doing. And we also have been able to talk to development partners across the world to say, listen, we appreciate your concern and commitment to supporting the development of Africa. But right now we have a tested way of impacting significantly and sustainably on the continent. Come partner with us at the Tony Elumelu Foundation and we'll make it work. And today we have United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in partnership with Tony Elumelu Foundation, with an ambitious program to impact 100,000 lives, entrepreneurs. The journey has begun. We have partnership with the European Union, EU. Last year, they supported 2,500 females across Africa. We're happy to see this kind of progress. We're happy that people like this are beginning to embrace a new way of intervening, a new way of giving that helps to create sustainability, prosperity, and most importantly, making people self-reliant, arming people to cater for themselves, their communities, and their nations, rather than just giving handouts that today you finish it, next day you come back. So it's quite catalytic, it's quite revolutionary, it's quite interesting. It's a new way, and we're happy that the world is embraced. And just this year, also, no, last year, this is the beginning of a new year. The USADF also partnered with us to impact and support more young Africans. We have quite a lot. It's all started with the International Red Cross, and now BMZ, GIZ, the German development agencies, African Development Bank. Our people are coming on board, and we hope that this continues because it's a new paradigm, it's a new way of helping to develop nations and continents.
That's such an interesting point that you just ended on, Mr. Elumelu, about this idea that there's historically, perhaps, entrepreneurship, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps in terms of the philanthropic ecosystem, the international aid ecosystem, maybe it wasn't the #1 priority for all organizations. There's always an emergency, there's always a crisis, there's always so many other issues that need to be addressed immediately. And then, if you help fund them right now, the results will also be tangible immediately, right? If you provide food aid, medical assistance, scholarships, etc. A lot of organizations go into that sort of grant making or funding because the results are quite immediate. You are talking about as you mentioned, catalytic capital. We also talk at the center about patient capital, right? There are investments in long-term, not only long-term job creation, long-term economic growth, that obviously a whole variety of important actors in the international development space are getting very involved in now. But obviously, you have created an ecosystem, very, very successfully created an ecosystem that is not just based on one country, entrepreneurs in one country, not even just based on entrepreneurs in West Africa. You have entrepreneurs from all 54 countries joining the TEF entrepreneurship program and starting their own businesses and successfully going through the program. But 54 countries is an enormous number. 54 countries that are in very different political climates, economic climates, social climates, speaking different languages, different religions, different cultures, different views on what business and entrepreneurship should look like at the community level and also at the large business level. So, that's a lot of different factors to consider when you're looking at obviously launching a program, successfully training those entrepreneurs, but then also, conducting some impact assessments about, the penetration of the program in all of these different, you have the TEF ecosystem that you're building, but you have all of the other ecosystems that exist within that. So maybe if you could just talk a little bit about, perhaps some of the challenges of working in a Pan-African context and, trying to be a truly Pan-African organization when obviously there are different challenges, even within a micro region, let alone at a continental level.
As you said, yes, Africa, 54 countries on the continent. And actually, it's funny when you interact with people from outside our continent, some speak about Africa as if it's one country. But yes, actually, it's not one country, 54 countries, 54 cultures or even more. And there's so many diverse languages. And these come with their own characteristics or challenges, languages in particular. I just said before, to penetrate North Africa, try to devise how to communicate in that part of the world. To penetrate the Francophone countries, Portuguese countries, language was an issue, okay? So we had to navigate all of this. And that is one of the reasons that the TF Connect, and I'll speak more about that, has actually helped us to leapfrog and address these issues. We also have infrastructure challenges, especially digital infrastructure on the continent, because if you want to settle from 54 countries, it's not practical for you to set up offices in all 54 countries. Otherwise, your administrative costs will take over all that you want to even apply to the entrepreneurs through the seed capital. So we had to deal with that challenge of the infrastructure challenge. And also business education. Business education, there's certain things we take for granted, you see, and as you also deal with cultures, that is quite different from one area to the other. But we want everyone to develop. And so these were some of the challenges that we encountered. And also we discovered that young ones need successful role models. They need successful business leaders. They need people to just watch and see. And in some areas, you don't find this commonly. So these are some of the things we encountered. But based on the experience, and again, that's why what we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation is it's quite different from what others, because we are on ground and we see all these challenges, and we try to come up with ideas, practical ideas that will help us solve this problem. I recall when we wanted, in partnership with UNDP, we have a program with UNDP for the Sahel region. Sahel region is a volatile region in Africa, Yeah. And we said that we need to find a way of economically engaging these young men and women, because people who have economic hopes and aspirations don't kill themselves, they don't take to extremism. And it was difficult at times to even get access or have access to people in rural communities because of lack of digital infrastructure that will help them participate. So we have to again devise ways and means and ways of interacting with this world. So these challenges existed, but one of the advantages of having entrepreneurs or private sector people in the world of philanthropy is that they bring business solutions in dealing with problems. They don't give up easily. Entrepreneurs don't give up. And so each time we encounter some of these challenges, we sit together and we say, okay, how do we solve this? How do we partner with mobile telephone providers? How do we partner with this? How do we partner with government? How do we do to bring solutions? And in all of this, we've managed to bring solutions to it. We do pitching competition, online. And the TF Connect that we built, I think, is the most strategic entrepreneurship infrastructure that has been created in Africa. It has really helped to bring young Africans together. It has also provided the training platform, opportunity for us to be able to train over 1.5 million young Africans. It has enabled us to reach people in very far places on the continent. And so there were challenges, but we didn't want to be hindered by these challenges. We evoked our private sector mindset in overcoming all of this. But most importantly, we are lucky to see the global development world listening to what we say to them, opening their minds, that really this could be a way to go. The International Red Cross, they've had an experience. Most times, there's crisis, you go in to provide relief. But we started discussing, how about working together to prevent some of these crises from happening? And they listened. And today, jointly, we have intervened in fragile economies of Africa, the Tony Elumelu Foundation and International Red Cross. This is kind of catalytic and impactful and transformative philanthropy we are proposing and recommend to the world. And that is why we are launching the Coalition of African Entrepreneurship. We want to grow, want to scale up further, so that, the hope that we dash. And what do I mean by that? Every year we create awareness for people to apply, and people apply, and we're able to take just like 1%. Because when you see over 500,000 applicants, for this program, and you're able to provide CCAP to only 1,000, that is not encouraging luck. That is actually dashing hopes. So what we're doing now is we're taking this message to the rest of the world to say, we have a tested way of giving, a tested way of helping to empower in a sustainable fashion a continent in their need of help, so that we can collectively create jobs. The the demography of Africa, people under the age of 30 represent over 60% of our population on the continent. So what kind of world are we going to be creating 10 years from today if they are not economically engaged? They who might be exporting terrorism and insecurity to every part of the world. So we say to the world that what is happening today, we must come together to address it, because it could be a threat to all of us every and anywhere in the world. And I'm happy that people are beginning to listen.
Yes, and certainly people are beginning to listen, and this the coalition for African entrepreneurship, I think, is really a testament to how much different organizations, different stakeholders are really beginning to listen and become involved and investing their own resources in in developing this ecosystem that you have been developing for many years now. I see that we have several very, very interesting questions already in the Q&A function. Thank you all so much for sharing your questions. I just have one more question for Mr. Elumelu myself, and then we will dive right into the open Q&A, which I'll moderate. So, and just a reminder for anyone who has been asking questions specifically about how to get themselves enrolled into the entrepreneurship program, the TEF entrepreneurship program. My colleagues, just a reminder, if you cast your eye over to the chat, my colleagues from the Tony Elumelu Foundation have actually popped some links and resources in there directly, so that you're able to log on and learn more about the program and how you yourself might be able to get involved. I think I've also seen some very warm messages, Mr. Elumelu, from alumni of the program who are here with us today and who have benefited from the mentorship of the program. So that's really wonderful to see that. So my final question is around this idea of partnerships. I think sometimes, our research at the center has shown, and, we launched a whole research agenda around this, around system change in philanthropy, particularly, in global growth markets. And how do you achieve system change? I think, a lot of the work that you're doing is really influential in the system change conversation. But I think the focus on collaboration, the focus on partnerships, on building these partnerships, a lot of times we see all over the world philanthropic organizations operating in silos, right? So perhaps they're operating in silos, because they're addressing a particular issue in a particular community. But sometimes, for a whole variety of reasons, that sometimes the partnerships aspect is a little bit lacking or still nascent, still needs to be encouraged. And something we definitely saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, or I should say during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in Africa, certainly in countries like Nigeria, was this rapid response, the need to immediately form linkages between not only the philanthropic sector and the civil society, but also with the private sector, with the governments, national government, local government. And so one of the things that we're trying to understand is, how do we keep that best practice alive? Not just during an emergency, not just during a pandemic. The need for partnerships and philanthropy is universal. It needs to be a long-term commitment, not just when there's a shock to the system. So it seems like you're, even before the pandemic, Tony Elumelu Foundation, you were thinking about this, how to develop these partnerships, both with the international, sector. I know, like you said, the International Red Cross. I know there's with, the German agencies, the EU, there's been so many different international and multilateral organizations that you've been working with. But how do you get those relationships to not just be let's run a one-off program, let's run a pilot program, let's do this one time and maybe see if it works, and then we'll start a committee that will meet once every 5 years to see if we can do it again. How do we create these really long-term lasting partnerships? Because we know everybody has their own priorities, their own KPIs they're looking at. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that before we move into the open Q&A.
I think it's a combination of factors. First is, in fairness to others, I believe that up until recently, people did not think that we could find tested African foundations or platforms that can coalesce, can bring people together for a common purpose. And the lack of this, its absence, made it almost mandatory for development partners and world to want to intervene directly. And at times, some have intervened the wrong way without knowing. There's so much aid inflow into Africa, has been billions. And you look around and you ask yourself, has this been truly impactful? The little work we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation with the kind of rigorous and strong impact assessment department we have in-house and also in partnership with others has shown that a lot more can be achieved for less, with less. And this realization and its propagation with the rest of the world is one of the things that is helping to change the mindset that, wait, there could be better solution to all of this. I believe that humanity, everywhere, anywhere, where all of us are created by God with the touch of kindness. We want to assist. We want to make sure that prosperity spreads. But what, in my viewpoint, has been the challenge is the approach to it. And this approach could be lack of trust, integrity issue, unprofessional conduct. How do you make sure that the last mile gets the impact, feels the impact of this purpose? And so you want to put your own infrastructure, deploy your infrastructure to achieve this. But what we are doing, the International Red Cross, UNDP, USAID, Google Alliance, even the GIZ, BMZ, DEG, African Development Bank, is showing that you don't need to do all of this yourself, that you can have a sustainable platform, tested, and that has integrity, that can help achieve. To all of us, it's all about humanity, about advancing the cause of humanity, about making the society, the world we live in, a much better place today and tomorrow. But I think, in fairness, it's been the absence of this in our environmental content that may have led to this. So what is beginning to unfold is giving confidence to people, operating at a level that meets all scrutinies, operating at a level that meets global best standards. And for the first time also, they are also seeing Africans, putting their own resources and not just NGOs or conduits for disbursement. So we say at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, we committed $100 million to this. We created the TF Connect platform ourselves. We have demonstrated over the years of beneficiaries who have funded on our own. And so it makes it easier. Then we work with Accenture via Deloitte to make sure that the process has integrity. So it makes it easier. So one way to building partnership is have a common goal that is bigger than one's. And so what we are pursuing at the Tony Elumelu Foundation is not Tony Elumelu Foundation goal alone. It's a global goal agenda that we need to create a more prosperous society so that we don't live what Clinton called barbed economy, so that we are all happy to create jobs for people. The world is now realizing that what happens in country A can affect people in country B, C. We've seen the issue of even youth immigration from the continent. It's affecting everyone everywhere. So if we create jobs at home and make people happy, they won't come. They won't move in that manner. So ways and under the harsh conditions to succeed. So that purpose, greater purpose, and two, just kind of subordinating self-interest and being driven by higher purpose. It's not about GZ alone, it's not about UNDP alone, it's not about this. It's about all of us committing to helping advance humanity. in the 21st century in Africa in a manner truly sustainable. I think these are ways we can all make this sustainable. So a coalition, and everyone that comes to the table with integrity, and also come to the table execution, performance, track record. And I think collectively, it takes time to build confidence. Collectively, we'll get there. But what you said is the right thing. We all must come together to provide solutions to the challenges that we have in the world today. One foundation, one country, one organization, one development agency alone cannot make it happen. We all have to come together. And that's why we preach, again, our philosophy of capitalism. It's about thinking long-term, it's about thinking of partnerships, it's about coming to government sector, development world, private sector. Let's work together. And if we come together, we'll deal with any challenge that we have faced as human beings. We've seen it, COVID, as you rightly said. COVID was tough, but the world came together, and today is almost becoming a thing of the past. So partnership is the way to go. And that's why the Tony Elumelu Foundation African Entrepreneur Coalition for Entrepreneurship is something we want to actually, we're taking to every part of the world to say we can even, is a 21st century Marshall Plan for Africa, way that we can create the jobs that our people need and help bring our women more economically engaged and involved, and create an ecosystem that helps to reduce poverty, more jobs, and prosperity to everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So on that note, we will perhaps close the portion where I'm asking you the questions, Mr. Elumelu, and in the interest of thinking about democratizing luck, we are going to democratize our Q&A with you for the moment. So we have some very, very interesting questions here already from the audience. Thank you so much, everyone, for putting in your questions. We will try our level best to get through as many questions as we can, but I hope that moreover, I'll see if I can even hybridize some of the questions together to get through more of them. So in the, I think this is a perfect segue. We have a couple of questions here around this theme of partnerships, Mr. Elumelu, that we were just talking about. So we have a question around advice that you might give, particularly for private sector and philanthropic organizations based or headquartered outside of Africa. So, international private sector organizations, so not the development agencies, but particularly private foundations, private philanthropists based outside of Africa, who want to support, these ideas around Afro-capitalism particularly. How can they best mobilize their resources to support development on the African continent? So thinking about your colleagues in the philanthropic sector based outside of Africa, corporate foundations, CSR based, overseas, how can they get involved? What's the best advice on how to get involved in these efforts?
The best advice from experience is that you have a tested platform. I don't want to even call it a foundation, a tested platform that has, over the past 15 years, in 2013 years, been involved in helping to democratize luck, create the right operating environment for entrepreneurs, engage government on advocacy, help to provide seed capital, business education, mentors, and digital platform for these young African entrepreneurs. If you are interested in helping to develop Africa and catalyze prosperity on the continent, I think it would be nice to engage with the foundation. And what we do, we are partnered with other foundations. We partner with Rockefeller Foundation. We've done research together. We partner with other foundations. Any idea you have, any purpose that's about developing Africa, let's sit down together. We have a platform that is sector agnostic. It can be agriculture, it can be entertainment, it can be ICT, education, any area. So long as it's about developing the continent, let's sit together, share with you, and rub minds with you on how we can make this possible, achieve this, working together, or just providing support and advice to you. But what is important to us at the foundation is there's so much to be done on the continent. Our resources are limited. We can only support 1,000 every year. But every year, you have over 500,000 people who are applying for jobs. I got a message from a guy for a Nigerian from the northern part of Nigeria. Let me see if I can find the message to read. Shadi. It was quite a telling message, you know. He sent to me, anyway, Shadi. No. So much, if anyone can hear me, if you have Shadi message, send it back to me. It's the guy we supported. So when President Obama was the president of the US, they got in touch with the Tony Elumelu Foundation to send some young Africans to interact with the president. And I went with about 2 or 3 of them. And Shadi was one of the young Africans that I took on the trip to the White House. He was there. He interacted with the US president. He was inspired. We gave him support. He set up a school in Sokoto. I need to find the mail. He set up a school in northern part of Nigeria. You know, the center of the Islamic Caliphate in the country. He set up a school there, and he has empowered. He wrote to me. I think he has over 3,000 students, people who are in school, and that he has over 100 teachers working with him, teaching these students. That is impactful. That is the kind of impact we want to create. And so I believe that those development organizations, foundations in particular, are said, let's define a common purpose and let's work together to make it happen. We're here to facilitate. What's important to us is let's work with you to see how we can develop Africa, because Africa is in their need of this kind of a development.
Absolutely. And on that note, maybe we'll jump into another question about the kind of the economic climate overall. Not only, I mean, this question is I believe from a colleague in Nigeria, because they say that there's an unfavorable economic climate in Nigeria at the moment. But I think it's not just in Nigeria. There is an unfavorable economic climate elsewhere in Africa. I'm sitting here in the UK. You could argue it's not a very favorable economic climate right now in many places around the world. So if there's progress, there's progress being made in a few sectors, but this person's question is about how, up and coming young entrepreneurs particularly contribute to providing scalable and lasting solutions. So perhaps, I don't want to kind of adapt this question, but I guess the issue is, moving beyond creating an opportunity for yourself and maybe a few employees to survive, but actually looking into the urgent need, the immediate need to put food on the table, to, be able to send your kids to school, et cetera. But then actually becoming part of this larger community-wide, region-wide, national kind of solution to these long-term problems. So I think that's that's something that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs are probably thinking about right now.
I think my advice, and there are many in that category, I would say that your story should be one of success in spite of challenges. Don't be deterred by challenges. Challenges are always there, obstacles on the journey to entrepreneurship. But you don't give up. Entrepreneurs are resilient. They are relentless. So please, the easiest thing for us to do as humans is to say, because of this, I have not done well. All of us today, even when we started, is not better than what it is today. One form of challenge or the other, though the challenges come in different shapes. But my advice, and this is what I do when I mentor young African entrepreneurs, please let your story be one of success in spite of challenges. And let it not be that you dropped off because of challenges. So that when you get there, you inspire others to say, and I say to people, if Tony Elumelu could succeed in Nigeria, Africa, you can do better, better. But the truth also is that we do have bottlenecks in business. Entrepreneurs should understand that that journey is not a linear, it's not a straightforward journey. It can be tough. And that is why we need coalition. That's why we need like the Tony Elumelu Financial Advocacy Program and all that. That's why we need to keep engaging our leaders to understand that we need to alleviate the problems and obstacles so that these young entrepreneurs will help us create the future that we aspire, the future we want to see for the continent. If we incentivize, if we prioritize, if we support our young ones and small and medium scale enterprises, they will go on to create jobs and they will help us engage jobless youth in our society, and then we'll create a better society for everyone. So it is tough, but please, my advice, let us not drop the ball. This is why you have the Tony Elumelu Foundation there, and this is also why we are launching this coalition for African entrepreneurs, so that we can touch more, we can help more people. You do need it. And what I also do in my business side is the way we invest is driven by, again, this is our philosophy of Africa capitalism. At S Holdings, at Transcorp, we try to invest in sectors that help to improve the operating environment. When in Transcorp, we generate electricity. Mm-hmm. When we generate electricity, we're helping entrepreneurs to have access to electricity that they need to power their businesses. So my call goes also to other African entrepreneurs. Whilst we do business to make profit, we should also see if there are tangential opportunities to touch lives and help our young ones, by way of helping them in areas that they need. We can look at transportation. We have chosen energy, access to electricity, so critical to us in our group. It can be other areas so that collectively we'll make all of this available and to help our young ones to improve and do well. But ultimately, it's just that everyone must realize that the success of our young ones is our own success ultimately. And that's what sustains that peace and the security we want to have.
Absolutely. And I think this goes perfectly, your point about success in spite of the challenges. I mean, there will always be challenges. And I think we have another question here that perhaps touches on one of the most challenging issues, which is around gender and women's economic empowerment on the continent, particularly because our whole conversation has been around entrepreneurship, creating sustainable, successful pathways for entrepreneurship. Perhaps one of the most challenging environments is for women getting involved in business and for women seeking to carve out their space, particularly young women in industries. Many of the industries you already mentioned that are really growing and booming in Africa, these are historically male-dominated industries, and you have, women entrepreneurs who are also trying to break into this space. So so I think I want to give you the opportunity to talk specifically, because I know the Tony Elumelu Foundation has been very, very conscious of this issue and the different ways that this issue needs to be addressed in different contexts, different political and cultural environments around the continent. But also, acknowledging that there are barriers that exist for women to get involved in these, entrepreneurial endeavors. So can you tell us a little bit about what types of programs the Tony Elumelu Foundation specifically has been involved in, and, more beyond the foundation, what advice, that you might have for other organizations trying to combat, gender inequality in entrepreneurship in Africa?
Let me share with the world our story. So in 2015, when we started this phase of the entrepreneurship program, our first, that 2015, we had 30% of our beneficiaries were women. But after that, Dr. Elumelu, my wife, who is, of course, a woman, she at our board meeting felt that that representation was quite low and that we needed to do more and that we could and must do more. And so we spread and created more awareness. And I'm happy to say that in last year, we had 2021, in spite of the COVID challenges, 70% of our beneficiaries were women. And that year, 2021, we supported 5,000 young African entrepreneurs, each one with a non-refundable seed capital of $5,000, and 70% of them were women. The world is changing. Our women are also stepping forward and stepping up. And we believe, as a foundation, that we must give equal opportunity to everyone. And beyond the foundation, in our wider business ecosystem, we are trying also to lead by example. We have United Bank for Africa, which operates in so many countries, over 25,000 staff, serving over 35 million customers across the globe. And today, the group board of UBA is female majority board. We have more females on the board of UBA than males. And that is a testament. Transcorp, Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, the group CEO of Transcorp is a woman. And if that's in Transcorp, we have another lady who is CEO of a company, and most of our businesses. And to us, it's not about quota. It's not about just appointing a woman so you can take a part. No, these are competent, capable, and they compete. And it's not deliberate, but so that when you see the basket and then you see stars, female stars, it's encouraging and it helps in the decision that we make. So my advice to everyone is, maybe for me, I'm surrounded by women. I have 5 daughters. I have 5 daughters. My mom is alive. My wife is there, and I have sisters, 2 sisters also. So I'm surrounded, and in workplace, I'm surrounded by lady, female CEOs and business leaders who are doing extremely well and making all of us, not just women, proud. My advice is, if we give opportunity to women, whether as SMEs or professionals, we're actually going beyond the people we directly are helping. You're giving opportunity to families, communities, and nations. My mother was able to train us because her business prospered. And we'll be failing if we do not touch and support other women. Mm-hmm. We have seen that women don't only cater for themselves, they cater for their children, they cater for their families, they cater for their communities. And the world will be a better place if we prioritize women a lot more. And that is why the Tony Elumelu Foundation and in a wider Holdings business empire, it's important to us that we give equal access and opportunity to women, and we encourage them because we are beneficiaries of that process. So we know firsthand that it can be a better future if you support women.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's, it's a very powerful message. And I think one, certainly that everyone needs to hear, anyone, kind of involved in the business sector, involved in, you can't have Afro-capitalism if you don't involve women. It's an extraordinary oversight if you do. But I think one thing that really came out as well, both in terms of, the women's economic empowerment work that we studied for the case study, and what you mentioned now goes to another question here in the Q&A, is around the importance of mentorship. The importance of having, having really strong mentorship. I know this is a really key category of the TEF entrepreneurship program. For the case study, I met and interviewed many TEF mentors who have really invested so much time and so much effort and so much of their own resources and intellectual capital in helping mentor other African entrepreneurs. So I think, the question is around, what is the importance of mentoring to tackle the entrepreneurship issues in Africa? And I would like to even go a step further to that question, because I think, the importance, we can probably agree, is going to be enormous. But for those who perhaps don't have regular access to strong mentorship, or really need some guidance, someone to take them under their wing, how can aspiring entrepreneurs seek out, really kind of a beneficial and constructive mentorship?
I'm where I am today because I was lucky, talking about luck again, I was lucky to have been mentored by great leaders. I started very early, and I was just lucky and fortunate to have been, I've been led, mentored, advised, corrected, sanctioned by a great leader. And that is one of the reasons I introduced mentorship to the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Program, because I know what that little advice, how it can make a difference in the life of an entrepreneur. Most times, we don't know it all. And most times, it's better to walk on the pathways of those who have been there before. They help you leapfrog. They help you leapfrog the mistake they have made, if they are honest with themselves. And I believe that there's no reason why a leader should not be generous with his experience and knowledge. And that is important. And that's why we remain very grateful to the over 3,000 volunteers who have signed up on the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship and Mentorship Program. And what we say to them when we engage with them is, what you're doing, you're being very generous with your knowledge and experience, and you're helping to create a better society and future for every one of us. These young entrepreneurs want to succeed. At times, they make mistakes. And that mistake can, in some instances, lead to the demise of their businesses. So why don't we help them navigate that so that they succeed? Realizing again that they succeed, they help us achieve our greater goal of improving humanity. So it's a major prerequisite for success in entrepreneurship. And my advice for those who are not so fortunate and lucky to have people mentor them is be hungry for knowledge, especially in the 21st century where the digital or commoditization of knowledge. Okay, read case studies, read autobiographies, learn from others who have been on that path, and see what you can benefit. And if you're lucky to have access to like the Tony Elumelu Foundation program, latch on, take advantage of it. And let me also see this opportunity to speak to my fellow African business leaders. We don't want to die with our experience. We don't want to die with all the wisdom and knowledge that we have.
Yes.
Let us try to replicate ourselves in others. Let's be generous in sharing our experiences, either through our memoirs, public forum or forum, engagement, signing up to mentor some of these young people when the opportunity comes, or it can be your own local community. Be the role model that they are looking for and help them, share your knowledge with them. It can inspire, and it does inspire them. I see this when I talk to people, young ones. They appreciate it a lot, and it makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I think we have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to try and get through as many questions as we can. But one question here is, particularly, and you alluded to this, but I think it's important to allow you, a few minutes to really talk about this. You mentioned the ever-growing concern about, kind of young, bright, aspiring African entrepreneurs and also just African youth in general who are leaving the continent because of the economic climate and the issues correlating to leaving the economic climate in Africa. So in order to create and facilitate a situation where these folks want to stay and really invest in their own infrastructure at home, obviously there's a great deal of work that needs to be done. One philanthropic foundation or even one philanthropic coalition cannot address all of the different pinpoints, the entire map of issues that will create an enabling environment. But But I think, it's something that you all have been thinking about a lot for a long time, about this issue of young Africans leaving the continent and how to actually inspire them to invest their intellect and their resources in creating small and medium-sized businesses at home. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the foundation and yourself, your colleagues that have joined this coalition, your international partners, even, I think importantly, have thought about this issue of, this kind of, these brain drains that happen in various countries, not just in Africa, by the way, this happens all over the world. So this is very important even for our guests who are here from other parts of the world, not just in Africa. And talk us through a little bit about how you when you're thinking about the long term of the foundation, how you create, these going back to the ecosystems approach, how you create these ecosystems that encourage people to invest their own resources at home.
We have a lot of that currently in Nigeria in particular. It's called a chapa in local parlance. Young people are just taken up in droves. Is unfortunate. If they had the option, they wouldn't live. And that is why responsible leadership is critical. And that is why we need to do everything within our means as private sector leaders, public sector leaders, to create the right environment. It is the lack of enabling environment that leads to this. People need access to electricity. Where you don't have access to electricity, where over 60% of your population don't have access to electricity, you people will move. And also some move for education. And they want to have best education, etc. So we need to also invest in creating the right education infrastructure in the country and on the continent. Some also leave because of access to healthcare. And some leave because of insecurity. All of these are manifestations of poor leadership, both private and public sector leadership. And we need to address this because it is not sustainable. And as a foundation, we try in advocacy, we engage governments through meetings, one-on-one meetings, bilateral meetings, public sessions and seminars, and also op-eds and just trying to make sure that people are engaged and that they know the way, the importance of creating the right environment for our people to do well. But ultimately, I believe that if we can create a conducive environment at home, if we can create jobs in particular for our young ones, if we can create access to electricity, if we can improve the insecurity or security situation on the continent, our people will not want to leave, and then they will stay for all of us to collectively develop the continent. And then where we see some leaving, please, when they leave, as I preach to them, they should not forget where they come from. They should not forget, they should see themselves as diaspora Africans. And remember that as Africans, we try to support one another. We try to support our people. And I preach this. And finally, for me, it's all about legacy. It's all about our leaders asking themselves how they want to be remembered. It's all about both public and private sector leaders. Private sector leaders also doing their own best to help, because one person cannot do this, cannot make the change. We need different people coming together. What we do at the Elumelu Foundation, we need to see other platforms also that are doing their own way, but in catalytic ways that help to create self-reliance and independence, and not to perpetuate this syndrome of dependency.
Yeah.
That is what we need to develop in the 21st century.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, I'll ask, because we have just a few minutes left, I'll ask the final round of questions here from members of the audience. And I'm going to once again combine 2 or 3 very good questions into one, and hopefully you can keep up with me here, Mr. Elumelu. So basically looking at, how far the foundation has come, I think you mentioned a figure earlier in terms of how many jobs have been created as a result of the program. So maybe you can remind us of the exact figure. And, looking forward, when you initially started out, you had these targets for the organization of, how much impact you would be able to achieve. And obviously things have evolved quite a bit since then. So if you're looking at the next 5 years, the next 10 years of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, moving beyond just the individual entrepreneurs that you can support, but actually creating this whole infrastructure across the continent, what does that look like for you? Perhaps that's a good message for us to wrap up our conversation.
We have joblessness on our continent. It is cruel, it's unjust that our young ones do not have access to jobs. We all must work together to create economic opportunity, hopes for our young ones. We must help create jobs that they need. If we don't do so, we are failing, and the future will be bleak for all of us. So to me, as a founder of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, and as someone who is genuinely committed to the development of our continent in a manner that's truly sustainable, I want to see a future that prioritizes our young ones. I want to see a future that brings our women into the mainstream economic activity and not just on the side. I want to see a future that has value for human lives. You see, on our continent at times, human lives are even worthless, almost like worthless, or even worth less than that of fowls or chickens. I don't like that. So, and it's not a good thing to bequeath or legacy to bequeath to the next generation. We must walk the talk. If we say that the youth of Africans are the future of Africans, we must make them feel so in the way we prioritize and the way we engage them. So I want to see a future that is built on a realization that the young Africans, our young ones, hold the key to our future. And if we're genuinely committed to developing our continent, we must prioritize them today. If not, we're all doomed.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a very, very important note to end on, and I think we are absolutely bang on time for our wonderful conversation today. So I wanted to particularly thank everyone in the audience, over 500 folks from all over the world for joining us today. For anyone who joined in late or had to leave early, we will be sharing ourselves as the Center for Strategic Philanthropy and also the Tony Elumelu Foundation. We'll be sharing the recording of this conversation after, soon after. And I also just wanted to take a quick moment while we wrap up, not only to thank Mr. Elumelu for being here with us, for dedicating time. I know you have been so busy, been traveling, you've been advocating for the foundation all over the world recently. So thank you so much for being here and for allowing researchers like myself to come and talk to the senior executives at your organization and all of the different colleagues that helped pull this together, because this has very, very much been a massive group effort to put this case study together. And this is just the beginning. We're looking forward to teaching the case study, to sharing it widely, making sure that this, the way of doing things at the Tony Elumelu Foundation is kind of shared broadly, because it really is such an interesting model and one that has created a huge amount of success for African entrepreneurs. So thank you to my colleagues at the Tony Elumelu Foundation. I know many of you are on the call right now. Thank you for your work and your efforts on this. And thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu, again.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing this experience with the world. And the Cambridge University is a great institution to help propagate this new way of doing, of imparting humanity. Thank you so much. And just 10 seconds to read that message I wanted to read before this.
Oh, yes, great. You found it.
Yeah, I found it. And this is from a young African based, Shadi is his name, based in the Sokoto, northern part of Nigeria. He sent this to me about 2 weeks ago. He said, it's been quite some time. During the period of silence, I've been on the job of daring to achieve. He said, so far, so good. Sir, my team and I have been able to grow the school to 6 branches with 3,000 learners, students, and 571 staff. We are now the second highest employers of labor in the Sokoto private space, as we slug it out with Boas event to soon take the #1 position. It's been hectic, but we are focused and poised to make a difference and leave our mark. African youth are actually the solution to the development challenges we face as a continent. You know, this is so profound. This is coming from someone a few years ago that was hopeless. And this is the same person now saying that African youth are the solution to our economic development. This same person is saying that it's been hectic, and this was the message I passed on before. There's been hectic, but we are focused and poised to make a difference and leave our mark. This is the spirit I want our young African entrepreneurs to have. It's always tough, has never been easy, but please go out and succeed in spite of the challenges that you face. Thank you, Chantal, for this wonderful opportunity too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Elumelu, and I'm so glad you found that message in the end, because I think it is such a, exactly as you said, such a profound note. You know, this I'm daring to achieve. I think that is such a wonderful sentiment, and I think my colleagues at the Tony Elumelu Foundation have posted several relevant links for anyone who has been inspired by our conversation today. I'm sure many people who have never even thought of starting their own businesses are thinking about it now. So if you are interested, please do visit the Tony Elumelu Foundation pages. If you're interested in our research at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy at Cambridge, we also have some links there in the chat. So hopefully you will have some great resources, some great food for thought now. And thank you. And we look forward to welcoming you again in our future conversations. Thanks so much.
Shonali.
Take care.
Thanks, Shonali.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Shonali.